What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about hardcore mode in Black Ops 4, and primarily we're going to talk about the fact that we may not see hardcore in the game at launch. On Twitter, somebody asked David Vonderhaar, is there hardcore mode in Black Ops 4, and is it still no health regen? Vonderhaar responded to this saying not yet. So from the sounds of it, it looks like we may not be seeing hardcore mode at launch, or this could be Vaughn doing his thing where he's being extremely vague, and maybe he just means they're not allowed to talk about it yet, or something like that. But in either case, I did want to talk a little bit about hardcore modes in Black Ops 4. It's something we've got no information on whatsoever, and I've had a lot of people asking me over the past weeks and even months about hardcore and why nobody's talking about hardcore for Black Ops 4, and the simple reason I haven't been talking about it is there's been no information on it. This is the first time hardcore has even been acknowledged by the developers for Black Ops 4, as far as I'm aware at least. So even if Vonderhaar's response means that hardcore won't be in the game at launch, I think it's very highly unlikely that we won't see hardcore at all throughout the game's lifecycle. I would think that we'll see it not too long after launch because the hardcore community, while it isn't the majority of the COD community, it's a decent percentage in most games. From what I remember in most Call of Duty games that actually showed the percentage of players or the actual player count, the hardcore game mode typically has about 20% of the player base in it, and that's not an insignificant number of people. Now for me personally, I really don't like hardcore. It's not for me. I don't enjoy myself on it. It's just not the style of game that I like to play. But I absolutely think it should be there at launch, or at least very shortly after launch, and it would be a very bad move on Treyarch's part to not have hardcore included. I would say this is even especially true for Black Ops 4, because there's a lot of people out there as well that really don't like that slightly slower time to kill in Black Ops 4, where it generally takes that one extra bullet. And I think many of those players would rather play hardcore this year, even if in the past they played core modes more often than not. So I think it's extremely important for them to have hardcore game modes in this game early on, if not at launch, like within the first couple weeks of launch. Otherwise, they may miss out on a pretty big chunk of the community. Now, as for how hardcore would work with Black Ops 4, I think some things may have to change, because with Black Ops 4, it's all about that manual health regen, and the time to kill for everything else seems to be a little bit longer, so the health probably wouldn't be set at 30 like we've seen in the past with hardcore, although maybe I'm wrong, maybe they'll still do that. And it would be interesting to see how they decide to handle hardcore this time around. I would assume there would still be some sort of friendly fire, so if you shoot a teammate, you either kill them or it would be ricochet and you kill yourself, so you have to be really careful at what you shoot at. The time to kill would be significantly faster, although like I said, I don't know if it's going to be generally a one-shot kill for guns, or if they're going to change it a little bit and make it slightly slower like they did with core modes, so it'll generally take more like 2 shots to kill with most weapons. But it's also likely that our heads-up display elements will be hidden, or at least most of them, probably not all of them, just like we've seen in the past with hardcore. And it would be interesting to see what happens with health regeneration if they decide to include it at all. Part of me thinks if they do have this hardcore mode, there will be some changes to that, and perhaps you'll have a limited number of first aid kits that you can use in a hardcore match. So you can heal yourself manually, just like in core modes, but there's a limit on that per life, and you don't get to just heal constantly all life. I think that would actually play pretty well for hardcore, personally. I mean, if you happen to survive a gunfight, but you take damage, maybe give the player an ability to heal like twice or 3 times per life at most. Also, it'd be interesting to see how armor plays out in hardcore, because I really think armor would be a pretty big problem in hardcore modes. I think it's something they'd have to pretty much disable, or else everybody would have to be running armor. If you have a piece of gear that essentially doubles your health, which is what armor would be doing assuming it soaks up 1 extra shot, and the gun was a one-shot kill, it effectively doubled your health in that situation. If there's a piece of gear you can put on your class to do that, everybody's going to have to do that. So I think there'd be some pretty clear balancing issues in hardcore that would need to be resolved, but at the same time, it's definitely something that can be solved. Perhaps they could just lock armor, or maybe they want to make it so the meta is armor, so you're really encouraged to go for those headshots in hardcore, otherwise it's going to take you an extra shot to get that kill on the guy, which I actually kind of like now that I think of it, but at the end of the day, having crutch pieces of gear, that's also not a good thing in my opinion. So as of now at least, that's all the information we have on the hardcore modes. We don't know if it's going to be coming at launch, or perhaps, like I said, it's just Vonderhaar's really vague way of hinting at the fact that they're not allowed to talk about it yet, and they'll have more information as we approach launch. Of course though, I'd like to know what you guys are thinking about hardcore in the comment section below. First up, would the lack of a hardcore mode be a deal breaker for you? Would that cause you to cancel your pre-order, or if you were planning on buying it right around launch, does that change your mind on that? Are you going to not buy the game if hardcore is not there at launch? And second, what kind of rule set would you like to see for hardcore this time around, assuming it's coming to the game? Would you like to see some sort of limited manual health regeneration? Would you like the time to kill to be just slightly slower, so a lot of guns will take 2 shots to kill, with the exception of probably some sniper rifles or some really high damage weapons? Also, any other ideas for hardcore? Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah.